Henry Maine's theory, movement from status to contract and from contract back to status. Introduction. Sir Henry Maine, a famous jurist of the anthropological, historical, school of law, explained the development of society and law in his book Ancient Law. He observed that societies do not remain static but evolve with time. According to him, the history of progressive societies shows a movement from status to contract. Later scholars also observed a reverse trend, that is, from contract back to status, in modern welfare societies. Meaning of status and contract. Status. Rights and duties are not chosen but imposed by society. Status means the legal position of a person fixed by birth or social group such as family, caste, or class. Under status, a person's rights and duties are imposed by society, not chosen by the individual. There is little or no freedom to change these obligations. In early societies, law was mainly based on status, where individuals were governed by customs and family relations. Status reflects a rigid and traditional social system. Examples: joint family system, caste-based occupations. Contract. A person is free to decide his legal relations. Contract means a legal relationship, rights and duties, created by the free agreement and consent of individuals. Under contract, a person's rights and duties are chosen voluntarily, not imposed by birth or social status. It is based on individual freedom, equality, and choice. Contract plays an important role in modern society, especially in trade, employment, and family relations. It reflects a flexible and progressive legal system. Examples: employment agreement, sale of goods, marriage by consent. Movement from status to contract. The movement from status to contract is a concept explained by Sir Henry Maine in his book Ancient Law. It describes the development of society from a system where a person's rights and duties were fixed by birth and social position, status, to a system where legal relations are created by free choice and agreement, contract. This change shows the growth of individual freedom, equality, and modern legal systems. Position in primitive society. In early societies, individuals had no personal freedom. Their rights and duties were determined by family or social status. Law was rigid and based on customs. In primitive society, social life was based mainly on status. A person's rights and duties were fixed by birth, family, clan, or caste. Individuals had no freedom to choose their legal relations. Law was rigid and based on customs and traditions, not on individual consent. The individual was considered part of the family or group, not an independent person. Growth of individual freedom. With social progress, people started demanding personal liberty and equality. Family and caste control weakened. With the progress of society, individual freedom began to increase. People were no longer completely controlled by family, caste, or clan. Individuals started gaining personal rights and equality before law. Social restrictions gradually weakened, allowing people to make independent choices. This growth of individual freedom prepared the way for the movement from status to contract. Rise of contractual relations. Economic development led to trade and commerce. People entered into contracts by free will. Law began to recognize individual choice and consent. As society developed, trade, commerce, and industry expanded. People began to enter into contracts based on free consent and agreement. Legal relations were no longer fixed by birth but were created by choice and negotiation. Contracts became the main basis of economic and social relations. This marked the shift towards a modern and flexible legal system based on individual freedom. Legal significance. The movement from status to contract has great legal significance. It shows the development of law from a rigid and birth-based system to a flexible system based on individual choice. Law began to recognize equality before law, freedom of contract, and personal rights. This change laid the foundation of modern legal systems and promoted justice, liberty, and social progress. This shift represented development of modern law, recognition of individual rights, equality before law. Sir Henry Maine summarized this change by stating, "The movement of progressive societies has hitherto been from status to contract." Movement from contract back to status. The movement from contract back to status explains a modern trend where the state limits absolute freedom of contract to ensure social welfare and justice. Although modern society is based on contracts, unrestricted contractual freedom often leads to exploitation and inequality. Therefore, the state intervenes and fixes certain rights and duties by law, creating a new form of status. This change reflects the role of the welfare state in protecting weaker sections of society. Meaning of reverse movement. In modern times, complete contractual freedom created exploitation and inequality. Therefore, the state intervened and imposed fixed legal conditions, resembling status. The reverse movement means the shift from contract back to status in modern society. It refers to the situation where legal relations are no longer based entirely on free agreement, but are fixed by law to protect public interest. This happens because complete freedom of contract can cause exploitation and inequality. Therefore, the state imposes certain mandatory rights and duties, creating a new legal status. Rise of welfare state. Modern states aim to protect weaker sections of society. Laws now regulate contracts to ensure social justice. The rise of the welfare state is a major reason for the movement from contract back to status. Modern states aim to promote social justice and equality by protecting weaker sections of society. To achieve this, the state regulates contracts and fixes certain rights and duties by law. Individual freedom of contract is limited for the public good. Thus, welfare legislation creates new legal statuses for social protection. Examples of contract to status. The movement from contract to status can be seen clearly in modern laws where the state fixes rights and duties by law instead of leaving everything to free agreement. Labor laws. Employment is no longer purely contractual. Laws fix minimum wages, working hours, job security, and safety to protect workers. Consumer protection laws. Consumers are given statutory rights regardless of the contract terms, to prevent exploitation. Family laws. Matters like maintenance, divorce, and marriage are regulated by law, not only by personal agreement. Nature of modern status. The modern status created in the movement from contract back to status is different from primitive status. It is not based on birth, caste, or family, but is created by law for social welfare. Its main purpose is to protect weaker sections of society and ensure equality. Modern status is flexible, reform-oriented, and based on social justice, not rigid tradition. This new status is created by law, based on social welfare, not birth, meant to protect weaker groups. Critical evaluation. Sir Henry Maine's theory has great importance in understanding the development of law and society. It explains that law evolves gradually with social changes and reflects the movement from status to contract, highlighting the growth of individual freedom and equality. The theory has strong historical value as it helps in understanding ancient legal systems and their transformation into modern law. It is also relevant to modern societies because the reverse movement from contract back to status explains the rise of welfare legislation. Overall, Maine's theory shows the close relationship between law and social evolution, making it practically significant. Merits of Maine's theory. Explains law as a product of social evolution. Highlights growth of individual freedom. Useful in understanding ancient and modern legal systems. Criticism. Sir Henry Maine's theory has been criticized on several grounds. It is argued that the theory is not universally applicable, as all societies have not followed the same path from status to contract. Even in ancient societies, some contractual relations existed, and modern societies still retain elements of status. Critics also point out that the modern status created by welfare laws is very different from the rigid, birth-based status of primitive societies. Therefore, the theory is considered overgeneralized and not fully accurate, though it remains useful for understanding legal development. Not all societies followed this exact path. Even ancient societies had some contractual relations. Modern status is different from primitive status. Relevance in Indian legal system. Sir Henry Maine's theory is highly relevant to the Indian legal system, as it shows both movements from status to contract and from contract back to status. In India, individual freedom is recognized through rights like choice of profession, marriage by consent, and freedom to contract, showing movement from status to contract. At the same time, welfare laws such as labor laws, consumer protection laws, family laws, and constitutional rights limit contractual freedom to protect weaker sections of society, reflecting the movement from contract back to status. Thus, Indian law balances individual freedom with social justice, proving the continuing relevance of Maine's theory today. India shows both movements. Status to contract, right to choose profession, marriage by consent. Contract to status, labor laws, consumer laws, constitutional rights. Conclusion. Sir Henry Maine's theory explains that society first moved from status to contract, giving importance to individual freedom and consent. Later, due to social and economic inequalities, society moved from contract back to status, where the state regulates relationships for social welfare and justice. Thus, Maine's theory remains highly relevant for understanding the development of law and society, even today. Sir Henry Maine's theory explains the development of law as a movement from status to contract, showing the growth of individual freedom and equality. It also recognizes the modern reverse trend from contract back to status, where the state intervenes to ensure social welfare and justice. Though not universally applicable, the theory remains highly relevant, especially in the Indian legal system, where law balances personal liberty with social protection. Thus, Maine's theory continues to be an important tool for understanding the evolution of law and society. Keywords: status, contract, ancient law, individual freedom, welfare state, social justice, Sir Henry Maine.